Hello and welcome to a very defensive episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. Are you on the defensive, Tim? You
Stop it,
feel
Steve. I don't want to hear from you.
um so actually we're not talking about being emotionally defensive. We're talking about the Steelers defense, which is
Uh,
widely considered one of the greatest defenses over several different, what would you say, eras since 1969. Yes. But you know what's odd about that, Tim, is when we think of all the plays with names on them, like the Immaculate Reception, or what do they call this Antonio Holmes thing? I don't know. Or the Lynn Swan, the kangaroo catch, and the levitating leap. There really aren't a lot of, like, for the defense, there aren't any named plays, are there? Can you think of any? I don't know.
no, that's a good point.
Yeah, so we're gonna look at some of those great defensive plays of all time today, and some of them are forgotten, some of them you'll recognize, some are just kind of like, oh yeah, maybe forgotten, you'll remember. So join us as we look back. So first up, I kind of organized them into groups. The first group is Super Bowl clinchers. They might have not been the most dramatic in interceptions, but they definitely, I would say, clinched and or pretty much salted away a Super Bowl. And the first one would be a Jack Lambert interception in Super Bowl 14. Oh, that was a big play, Tim, because the Rams were driving with about 5 minutes left. And the Rams really had been up to the task. Like, the Rams were not expected to compete in this Super Bowl, but they are far more competitive than anybody thought they would be. And I think they actually had a lead at halftime, didn't they? I think.
They had a lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So this was a big play by Jack Lambert and a veteran team to finally vanquish the Rams and Gus Ferragamo and, you know, I don't know who's the guy from the TV show. Yeah, him
Merlin
too.
Olsen.
Yeah, he
No,
was the commercials.
Fred
He was,
Dreyer.
yeah.
Is that who you're
So
thinking of?
yeah, it was
He was
what's
on
his
that
name?
team. Hunter.
Yeah, Hunter. He was
Yeah.
hunting. He was hunting a
Yeah.
Super Bowl and was stopped. Him and McCall. No, I can remember his co-star, but I can't remember the name of the show. Hunter. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
My brain's really working well today. But this is kind of the Steelers' last hurrah of that Super 70s team. After that, they really didn't threaten for any more Super Bowls. And but a great way to end the run. One of the few times in NFL history that I think what every player on that team was pretty much drafted. There were no free agents or anybody signed like that. So you'll never see that again, huh?
Yeah, correct. And we did a whole episode on Super Bowl 14 and fleshed all that out. And you're right, Steve. The Rams were way more competitive than anybody thought they were. And three different times in that game, they had come back to take the lead. So the Steelers had just taken the lead in the fourth quarter, and now the Rams were about to come back for a fourth time and take the lead again when Lambert made that interception. So that's not a super like in the forefront of everybody's mind kind of Steeler history play, but it's huge. It's really huge
Yeah.
because it ices the Super Bowl for the
And
Steelers.
even when they show Jack Lambert highlights, they really don't show this
Yeah,
interception.
yeah,
Like, they show him throwing Cliff Harris to the ground, or
right, right.
tackling people and spitting all over the ground and fighting with Cleveland Browns. But yeah, not this play. And this is probably his biggest play of his career, if you think about it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It won him a Super Bowl. So next up is another, I'll call it Super Bowl clincher. You might be able to argue with this, but I think it is. Ike Taylor, he had an interception in Super Bowl 40. There was still about 10 minutes left, and the Steelers had a 4-point lead. And this was after one of the controversial holding calls. But, Matt Hasselbeck didn't have to throw an interception. Or maybe Ike Taylor just made a play. But Ike had like a similar like he had another one lined up in the first quarter that he dropped, but on this one he doesn't. So thank goodness Ike holds on to that interception, unlike a lot of others he dropped. And good old Super Bowl 40. I mean, I think this kind of put the Seahawks away, because then a couple plays later they do run the the fake play with Antoine Randall and Hines Ward. Although that touchdown doesn't have a name, so I don't know why it doesn't. But wide receiver reverse pass, I don't know, wasn't catchy enough. But
Yeah, that was another, like, it was kind of similar to a little bit similar to the Lambert play where the momentum had shifted, and yeah, Ben had thrown this bad interception, and that made it what was it 14 to 10.
10, yeah.
And then Seattle starts driving, and they get all the way, they complete a pass to the 1 yard line, but there's a holding call, and it was holding. I'm sorry. Again, I know we've been through this. I'm not going to rehash it all, but it was Clark Hagen's got like pulled down to the ground. So I don't know why how that isn't holding. But anyway, so then they were trying to make something happen, and Hasselback throws that interception. And like you said, Steve, Ike was one of those guys who was a really good defender, just didn't intercept a ton of balls. He just wasn't a guy that caught the ball a lot. That's why he was a defensive back and not a wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
And he hung on to that one. And yeah, that's a huge play, because you're right. Without that, who knows what happens? Even if Seattle kicks a field goal there,
yeah,
the Randall touchdown doesn't ice anything at that point, so it only made it an 8-point game. And I don't know that the Steelers would have had the momentum to do that at that point had they not got the interception, right? Even if Seattle kicks a field goal, it's 14-13. Now the Steelers have to get the ball deep in their own territory on a kickoff, and then maybe they go 3-and-out again, and then who knows what happens, right? So that was a huge play.
Yeah, and Ike doesn't get a lot of credit as one of the great, like, well, maybe around in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh he probably does, but I think nationally he doesn't get some of the credit that maybe he should, because he didn't catch a lot of his interceptions. Like I said, he had that early one, that he probably should have caught in Super Bowl 40 that he dropped, like Ike was wont to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
Ike, I like Ike Taylor. So.
Yeah, I did too. He had a big interception in the AFC Championship game before that too, against Denver.
That was
right
the one he
before
held
half.
like it was like, the crown jewels of
That's
England or
right.
something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's like must not drop. That was right before the half. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
and
ended up scoring a touchdown that pretty much put the game away.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was clutch that off season. And like you said, when you think about that run and all the big plays and everything, you just don't think of Ike Taylor, and we probably should.
He took pretty much, Marvin Harrison out of the playoff game too. Like Marvin Harrison did not have a good game.
Yeah. Well, same with and I know they were missing their quarterback, but same with Chad Johnson the week before that. So yeah.
Moving on back to is this Super Bowl 10? This is Super Bowl 10, another Super Steelers team, and this is kind of an underrated play. This is at the end of Super Bowl 10. There's a Hail Mary that Roger Staubach's attempting to throw to Drew Pearson, and Mike Wagner actually does the unforgivable sin of not knocking it down. It bounces off his hands, but it goes to Glenn Edwards, and we'll watch Glenn Edwards run around inexplicably for like 30 seconds. And Tim, why did Glenn Edwards return that ball out of the end zone? What was his thinking on that? Explain and go. Yeah, there's no, it's kind of scary, because was this the year that Dallas had completed a Hail Mary the week, like in the championship game to beat Minnesota? Was that the same season?
Yes, it was the same season.
And it was to the guy. It was to
Drew Pearson.
Yeah. Yep. So that was, and if you watch it, if Wagner had pretty good coverage, that could have been completed. That really could have, and they had a history of doing it. It wasn't a bad pass by Staubach, and Pearson was there. Wagner just made a pretty good play, and Glenn Edwards was kind of Johnny on the spot. And that clinches Super Bowl 10, which is probably one of the greatest Super Bowls ever played between the two best teams in the league that year, and maybe the two best teams of the 70s. Sorry, Dolphins. You're the third best team. But that
was, if you remember too, that was all set up because of a very controversial decision by Chuck Noll.
Yeah, he didn't punt because he was afraid his punt would get blocked.
Right.
Yeah. But then they ran the ball like 4th and 9.
Right.
He just runs the ball into the middle. He went super conservative at the end of that game.
Yes, it was super conservative. Now, to be fair, he had a pretty good defense, right? And
Yeah.
his thought process was, with this defense I have, he trusted his defense to stop Dallas more than he trusted his offense or special teams to throw a pass or punt. Right. And I think Bobby Walden, I think they had already blocked a punt right earlier in that game. So it was that's basically what he was gambling on, was that. But there was that play that you're talking about, Steve, was 4th and 9 where they handed off to Blyer, like you
Yeah.
said, made no sense. If you're gonna go for it, at least go for it.
Yeah.
That was on the Dallas.
Well, he had his backup quarterback. I think Hanratty was in at that point too, right? I think.
Yes, because yes,
Yeah.
that's another good point. Yeah, you're because Bradshaw got knocked out of the game. That's a very good point. But they were around midfield.
Yeah,
Like
even if you kick a poor crap punt that's like 20 yards, they're at their 30 and that ball doesn't make it to the end zone. So,
and
yeah.
you know what the clock was when Blair got stuffed? 1 minute and 28 seconds.
Yeah, that's forever.
Yeah, like that was quite the gamble. But fortunately, it worked out. But that could have been a disaster. I mean, Staubach was known, like you said, or just that postseason, Staubach was known
Yeah.
for last second drives.
To what's his name? Drew Hill.
Drew Pearson, yeah,
Drew Pearson, Drew
yeah.
Hill. That's a singer. So yeah.
Drew Hill was actually a receiver for that Rams team that you talked about.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. So
I'm
you were
mixing
thinking
up
of the right.
I'm syncing up my Super Bowl teams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Drew Pearson, Golden Richards, who cares?
yeah.
Super Bowl losers. No, actually, they did win 2 Super Bowls in their own right.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So
Not against us.
that. um, so moving on, off of interceptions that Glenn Edwards are still running around to this day. Like, what was he thinking? Like, if you watch the America's game, which is where I kind of got this from, was like Mike Wagner's even like, go down, Glenn, go down. Like, why are you running around?
Yeah, nothing good could have came from that. So
Yeah, thank goodness he
put that
finally
put that clip.
decided cooler heads prevailed and somebody got smart and said, just fall down.
Yeah, that's one of those. I feel like that's one of those, back in the day you didn't have these diva players, and you had this well coached and disciplined teams, and it's like not always.
I don't think he was like being a diva. I just think he just like, oh, I made an interception in the Super Bowl. Let me run around.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if there was like 3 seconds on the clock, I could understand it. Like, hey, let me just run around and run off like these last 3 seconds and then I'll fall down. But I don't know. Whatever. Moving on to forgotten plays that won't be forgotten anymore, at least not by me and Tim, right? So in 1984, which just isn't a book by George Orwell, I mean, so what the Dolphins were, what, Tim? They were the top seed, right, in the AFC?
Yeah, 84 is a weird year because the Steelers, this is like a bunch of guys are retired. Terry Bradshaw's gone, and Mel Blount, Franco, Joe Green, all those guys are gone. A few guys are left, like Jack Lambert's still there and Stallworth is still there, but Mark Malone's the quarterback. Frank Pollard's the key running back. Lewis Lips is a rookie receiver. It was a very transitional year for them, but they won the division, and then they go to play Denver, who was 13-3. Steelers were 9-7, and Denver was 13-3. So that's what a 4-win difference there.
Yeah. They have to play in Denver where it's hard to win.
Yeah, where it's hard to win. And this is John Elway. This is like the John Elway era. So I think going into that game, a lot of people gave the Steelers zero chance.
Yes. And so late in the fourth quarter, Gary Anderson lines up to kick a field goal of 28 yards on grass and promptly misses.
Yeah, and it was tied at the time. It was tied with like 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
And it was a chip shot to give the Steelers a lead, and he missed.
And it's not like
shocking.
John Elway could, orchestrate a drive that might win a playoff game, huh, Tim?
Well, and that's the thing. Like Elway you don't want to give Elway the ball back even with a 3-point lead, but now you're giving Elway the ball back and it's tied. So now all John Elway has to do is get in the field goal range. So Steelers are done here, right?
Yeah. Who's that with Denver? Rich Carlos did they have the barefoot kicker guy? I wonder.
Probably at that
Yeah.
point, yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't quote me on that.
In January in Denver kicking barefoot. That sounds like a great idea. But that isn't what happened. We didn't see Eric Williams' interception return to the 2 for if you had that on your bingo cards, yeah, fill that in. Big play. Forgotten about playoff game and forgotten about play by Eric Williams, who's a kind of a forgotten player. He only played for the Steelers for I think 2 or 3 years, and then after that was out of the league after another year. So one of the rare playoff wins in Denver for us. I think this in the AFC Championship game in '95. Is that the only 2 playoff games we've won in Denver?
2005, yeah. I think that I think so. I think we've only beaten them 3 times total. We did a whole episode
Yeah.
about the history of that series. But yeah, that Eric Williams was like, and I think when we talked about this before, I think I said it's like the greatest play in Steeler history that absolutely no one would ever remember.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's a divisional playoff game that's tied in the final minute, and Eric Williams intercepts John Elway, returns it to the 2. The Steelers punch it in for a touchdown and they win. It's like
By the
yeah,
aforementioned Frank Pollard.
yeah, by the aforementioned Frank Pollard. Yeah, and it's a shocking upset at the time to beat John Elway at Denver in the middle of that era. Uh, and Eric Williams is the guy that did it. So
Go figure.
go figure.
Yeah. I guess maybe a little Mel Blunt. He left some magic in his locker there for him.
Apparently so.
And this is definitely a Betamax classic from the Tim archive.
It is a Betamax classic. Yeah, I had that game on tape for a lot of years. I would always remember is the very end of it was cut off. So I
Did
didn't
you
get
at
like
least
the
have
last.
the Eric Williams interception?
I had that. I had the Pollard touchdown, but then there was still a little bit of time where they had to kick off to the Broncos, and the Broncos weren't able to do anything. That part got cut off. That always bothered me.
Record over with like an episode of Pound Puppies. Anyway, moving on to I don't know how forgotten this play is, but it's in there. Deshae Townsend's interception in 2008. This is the 2008 team. Boy, they're on this list a couple of times because boy, that defense made some plays that really won the game. That team was just clutch, and they played a tough schedule, so they had to be. And so Dallas is a pretty good. I forget what their record was, but they were a playoff team. They're very good, and Tony Romo's pretty decent to good quarterback, depending on your opinion of him. And I think they were leading at that point, Tim or Todd.
So the Cowboys were in the lead. The Steelers had just driven all the way down the field, and Heath Miller scored a touchdown to tie the game.
Yeah, that's it.
But now there's like 2 minutes left, and the Cowboys get the ball back. So the best you're hoping for is, okay, let's stop them and get to overtime, right? Because it's like you're probably not going to get the ball back. Just try to hold them to not let them get in field goal range. But nobody, I think, expected what happened next.
This is actually one of the times Renegade really worked.
That's
like
right.
If you see like fan video of it, they play Renegade right before this. So, oh mother, it was and Tony Romo was, he didn't quite see this one coming like he does on TV. They're gonna blitz right here. I'm gonna throw it right to number 26. And it's an interception. It went for a touchdown, right? Yes. So we're all golden there. That kind of propels the Steelers on their way to the Super Bowl. There's another bigger plays in that season, obviously, that may or may not make this list.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great defensive plays that year. As I was making this list, I realized that. So.
Yeah, I remember watching that game with a group of people, and just everybody was going absolutely crazy. I mean, people were already psyched up because they had come back to tie the game. And then when that happened, it was just so unbelievable. That pass just kind of, he was throwing that for, I think, yeah, he was throwing that for Jason Witten, and it just kind of got away from him, Romo, and it
Well,
went,
there was a blitz, I think, or somebody got pressure on him. I do believe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just, yeah, it just got away from him, and then Deshae Townsend, another one of those like underrated guys that like did a lot of key things that was never a star. He was just kind of Johnny on the spot, and he returned it all the way. And that's like you said, Steve. That was kind of that team. Won a couple of big games that way, all the way up until the end of the season, which, like you said, we'll talk about later, I'm sure.
Yeah. So sticking with forgotten, and this is a play that happened in the Super Bowl. You would think, how would a play in the Super Bowl be forgotten? But I feel it is. I mean, maybe Tim, you'll feel differently, but that would be this Mike Wagner interception in the Super Bowl 10. Now the significance of this was the Steelers were actually losing at the time, 15-10, and it was in the fourth quarter. Boy, another Super Bowl where the Steelers were losing in the fourth quarter.
Mm,
They had to come back, huh? That's hard to
yeah.
believe. They've done that 3 different times in their Super Bowl history, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. That's wow. We are really spoiled here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we are.
Nah, sucks to be you, Cleveland. There's a random Cleveland shot just for fun. Um,
Hey, on the bright side, they've never been on the losing end of a Super Bowl. They
yes, yeah, that's
so
true. You
uh,
can't say they've never lost one. Then the Steelers
yeah,
have lost 2, so they
yeah,
have that over us
we've been down in the fourth quarter 3 times in the Super Bowl. They've never been down in a Super Bowl at all. So
ever.
ever,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. Neither is Jacksonville or Houston, so or Detroit.
nope. So perfect records.
Um, so Mike Wagner gets a crucial interception and returns it. And was it Does Franco? I forget. They score a touchdown. I think it's a pass, but it's a pretty big interception because they were losing, and the defense was really good that year. And the Cowboys were the only team to score in the first quarter of that season on a play. And Mike Wagner in the interviews says that he was a little cautious in the first quarter because he just wanted to play back and play it safe. And Drew Pearson, I think I got his name right this time, did score an early touchdown. But this time he believed in what he was seeing. He was prepared. And Staubach went back to it, think they could fool him again. And he went right up and picked it off and made probably a play that turned the tide in this Super Bowl that got the Steelers the winning points. And hey,
Yeah, that's a huge play. And kind of like we said about the maybe similar to the Ike Taylor interception, like shifting the momentum is so important in a game that's close, in a game where you're playing it's a Super Bowl, so you're not playing a slouch team, and you're playing against Roger Staubach, and then in the Seattle game, the Steelers were still winning at the time. In this game, they were losing, so
yeah,
that's pretty significant play that, like you said, yeah, isn't as remembered as probably it should be.
we're talking about Deshae Townsend maybe being underrated. Is Mike Wagner underrated, Tim?
Yeah, probably. Again, I like Deshae and Wagner were both overshadowed by a lot of other bigger, huge names
Yeah,
on
they're
their
not Donnie
respective teams.
Shell. He's not Mel
Yeah,
Blunt.
right,
Not the
right.
other corner, whoever the other corner on the other side of Mel Blunt was. I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so he is kind of like that guy, like a not even like a Ryan Clark, or probably like a Ryan Clark, or who's the guy opposite of Troy in Super Bowl 40?
Chris Hope.
Chris Hope.
Yeah,
There's another, like, he was another solid, like, the
yeah,
Steelers kind of have like just these solid, free safeties, and or well, I guess, yeah, the safeties that stay back, to allow the
right.
other, Donnie Shell to go, hurt poor Earl Campbell or,
Yeah,
or
that's
OJ.
true.
So
That's true.
same thing with Polamalu. He had, Ryan Clark was probably his best kind of safety mate there. But he also had Chris Hope, who was pretty well too.
Yeah.
So does any the first points in the Super Bowl by the Steelers? If you remember this, you're a Steeler aficionado, because rumor has it that there was Stan Savran was asking who scored the first Super Bowl points in Steeler history to this player, and this player did not even know that he had done that. Now, in this player's defense, he had lost about 10 pounds and had the flu all week and been sick, but still played. But that person is, of course, one Dwight White. Who is Dwight White still with us, or did he?
No, he passed away.
He passed away. I thought
Yeah.
so. Yeah. So, but Dwight White did not even know that he scored the first points. And this Super Bowl's, if you've watched it, it's pretty a rough watch, because it's 2-0 at the half. The only thing I remember you got like the Super Bowl on VHS back before like the internet was really big time. And do you remember? I just remember like a commercial with like Fran Tarkington all telling us all to drive. We all got to drive 55 miles per hour and turn our lights off at night, like, because it was like the energy crisis.
Oh, wow.
I remember that PSA, like, and it's just like Fran Tarkington sitting in like a 70s style shirt and like in somebody in his living room.
Nice.
The Super Bowl was totally different in 1974. Super Bowl, what was this, 9?
Yeah. Very different time. Yep.
But yeah, very important play. Like, this is probably one of the biggest plays in Steeler history, the first points ever scored. And I mean, it wasn't the deciding margin, was it? No, because they ended up kicking a field goal, I think.
Yeah, it was, the final score was 16-7, but
Yeah.
but it was 9-7 late in the game before Bradshaw kind of got the clinching touchdown, and without that safety, it would have been 7-7. So
Yeah. So good for Dwight White, even though he didn't remember he did it, but he might have had an excuse with the flu there.
yeah,
What a gutsy performance by him playing with the flu.
yeah, for sure.
So next up is a play that I'm sure we'll have some video of. This would be Joey Porter and James Harrison's sack on Peyton Manning. Joey Porter got a sack. Now, to set this up, this is the AFC playoff game in 2005, and the Troy Polamalu interception that wasn't, and the Colts have now come back to make it 21-18, and they have the ball, and it looks like they have all the momentum, and Dick LeBeau gets smart and just kind of turns the defense loose on them. They stop sitting back, and Joey Porter just has like a great run. On third down, he sacks Peyton Manning. Then on fourth down, it's actually more of Ferrier. Like, we've talked about how James Ferrier is very underrated. Like, Ferrier makes a big play, but him and Ferrier both sack him on fourth down. And I think these two plays kind of go together. And if Bettis wouldn't have fumbled, this would have been the end of the game. Because this is one of the biggest plays in Steeler history.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't get the credit it deserves, because Bettis fumbled and then all that stuff happened after it. But what should have happened is Bettis takes it into the end zone, and then that's the end of the game.
Or it gets stuffed 3 times. We kick a field goal.
We run out the clock, basically, and him getting stuffed 3 times actually probably would have been better in terms of killing the clock. So,
well, it would have got rid of their timeouts.
Yeah.
And they only had those timeouts because they didn't call the interception.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So you're right. That was that should have been the end of the game. And so you're right, it's forgotten.
Even if they would have called the interceptions, let's say Peyton Manning still gets together and drives them down the field and gets it to 18-21, then they don't have those timeouts, and then you're just taking knees.
Right.
So,
yeah, it was, I mean, I'm glad it worked out the way it did, because it makes it all that much more memorable. I mean, it took, I don't know, 5-6 years off my life, but it was, it was memorable. So, but you're right. That series of plays was so dominant, and Peyton Manning was so frustrated because he couldn't get any time to throw. He was so used to just sitting back in the pocket and calling his audibles, and the Steelers defense just they had the number of the Colts offensive line that day. And I think didn't Peyton kind of get himself in some hot water? He kind of threw his offensive line under the bus after the game. Remember, he was like, "Well, we had some problems with the schemes or something."
Yeah, the way they tried to block, like they tried to have the guards come out and help the
Yeah.
tackles, and it didn't work. Like Tarek Glenn, I don't remember of all the people's names I've forgotten today. I remember Tarek Glenn, the tackle for the Colts. Like Joey Porter just abused him that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
That was not a good play. And Tarek Glenn was a pretty good player. So,
Yeah.
but big plays on the way to another Super Bowl. So another big play by the defense, no longer forgotten. Another play that we'll have some video for is of a gentleman named Brian McFadden, who I think actually has like somewhat of a media presence now. He does like a podcast and such. But he was a rookie from Florida State, and he was playing in the same AFC playoff game. And this is after the Bettis fumble. The Colts are driving, and they actually get close enough to where Peyton thinks they're in field goal range. So he starts taking shots in the end zone. So, wow, it doesn't look like the strongest defensive play, but it had to happen, and he knocks the ball away. And it is Reggie Wayne was really good, and he knocks the ball away. And, like, if he doesn't knock the ball away, boy, is the Steelers' lore and history a little bit different, huh, Tim?
Yeah, and McFadden was a rookie. I mean, like for him to be in that position in that time of the game when, like you said just a few minutes earlier, the defense didn't even think they would have to come back on the field other than like, oh yeah, they're going to try to throw a couple like Hail Mary type passes, but they were supposed to be up by 2 scores at that point. They weren't even supposed to be playing anymore. And then you have this rookie on, the Colts receivers who were like Harrison's a Hall of Famer, Reggie Wayne's I don't remember if he's in the Hall of Fame or not, but he's pretty close. So yeah, that's another kind of underrated huge play. And like you said, Manning was throwing for the end zone because, well, we're already in field goal range and we play in a dome. So we've definitely got the field goal locked up
Yeah.
with like the most accurate kicker in league history. Here, I'll just take a bomb for the end zone, see if we can win the game right here. And it didn't
wasn't a
work out.
bad decision by Peyton Manning,
No,
really. And it wasn't a terrible play. Like Reggie Wayne had, I think, caught a 2-point conversion that was unbelievable earlier.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I mean, he was on fire like that fourth quarter. So
Yes.
it wasn't a bad idea, but a great play by Brian McFadden, and kept them out for, of course, the idiot kicker from Canada and via WVU. So look at that. I got a Cleveland Browns rip and a WVU rip in the same podcast episode.
Nice. Now, if you can somehow work in the Philadelphia Flyers, you'll have the Trinity.
I'm sure they're idiots somehow in there too. I'm saying I'm listing this under forgotten plays. Maybe people remember this. So it's Super Bowl 43. It's at the very end. The Steelers have the lead. And I think there was like, I don't know, how much time was left after the Holmes catch? Like 15, 20 seconds?
35, actually, 35. So
oh, wow, that's nice that you remember that number. So after kind of playing peekaboo with Kurt Warner, LaMarr Woodley hits him as he's about to throw, and he fumbles the ball. Like, have you heard that controversy? Oh, Kurt never fumbled, blah blah blah. He fumbled. Brett Kiesel recovers it, and that's the end of the game. And you think, well, it's kind of a nondescript end to a great game. Not really, because I have watched Larry Fitzgerald since he was 18 years old. If you were going to throw a Hail Mary, the one person in football history that I would want going up for that Hail Mary outside of like Calvin Johnson would be Larry Fitzgerald. Because you could put all 11 guys on Larry Fitzgerald. If the quarterback puts the ball anywhere near, and it could be like it could be Drew Stanton throwing the ball. Larry's going to come down with it. Would you like a jump ball? He's the best jump ball wide receiver in the history of the National Football League. And we're about to have a jump ball in the end zone with Ike Taylor, the worst jump ball covering corner in the history of the NFL, covering him. That could have been complete disaster.
Yeah, it absolutely could have been. It could have been, or you could have had an interference call, or Heck, it's one of those things where you just never know. If they have a chance, they have a chance. And if I'm picking guys to be back there, yeah, Larry Fitzgerald's going to be the guy I want back there. So another kind of, like you said, Steve, underrated play, because it's everybody remembers that Super Bowl kind of ended with the Holmes touchdown, but it didn't. There were still a chance, albeit a slim one. There was still a chance for the
They were,
Cardinals after
I
that.
think they were in, like, he got close enough to where he would have made the end zone from there, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think he would have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't like he was throwing it from the 5. He was on like the 40 or the 40, their 40 or
yeah,
45, which
yes,
wouldn't have been an impossible throw.
yes.
Yeah. So thank goodness Lamar Woodley and his 1 or 2 good seasons picked the Super Bowl for that.
Yep.
So another underrated play, we're going to the AFC Championship game in 1995. This is Captain Comeback, Jim Harbaugh. Do we have any other good nicknames that we can rip on Jim Harbaugh with? Captain Khaki. This is before he was Captain Khaki.
Yeah,
He was just Captain Comeback. The Colts
yeah.
have this magical run. I don't even think they had. I think Marshall Falk was hurt. They didn't even have Marshall Falk, but Harbaugh plays his like tail off and gets them to the championship game. And they actually have the lead in the fourth quarter, but the Steelers retake the lead on the Bam Morris touchdown. And they're driving and they get the ball with, I think, was it 5 or 6 seconds left at the Steelers 28. So the ball is definitely going to make the end zone. And, Harbaugh does exactly what you should do. He just kind of throws it up for grabs. And some of us, not some of us, one announcer who was a former NFL quarterback thought Lamont Jordan had caught it, but he did not. It hit the ground. And it was because a guy named Randy Fuller, who no one will ever remember, who was wearing number 29, ironically enough, knocked the ball out of his hands as he was rolling around with the ball on his chest. Randy Fuller came over and kind of knocked the ball away. I'm giving him credit. Nobody else will. And I know it's not maybe the prettiest play in Steeler defensive history, but that's what I'm calling it.
Yeah, it wasn't like a skill play. It wasn't like Randy Fuller was like, oh, there's the ball. Let me
He was just
position
kind
my
of
body this way. It was
jumping
just
over.
it
Yeah.
was a mass of bodies kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But that you're right. It's if Randy Fuller is not there, and yeah, that could have been caught. I mean, like you said, and like you said on the NBC broadcast, they thought it was caught because it looked like he got it, but
Phil
fortunately it hit
Sims
the
thought
ground.
that he, not Chris Sims. If I said Chris Sims, I'm sorry.
You're right,
It's
Phil
Phil
Sims. Yeah,
Sims.
yeah,
The father, not the son.
yeah.
So to wrap this up in a nice bow here, we're going to go with legendary plays. These are plays that everybody knows. So Willie Williams, going back to the 1995 AFC Championship game, Willie Williams makes a very under the radar play, like on a 3rd and long. He runs in and tackles, I think was it Lamont Warren, the running back? Yes,
Yeah.
by his shoestrings. And it's not the prettiest tackle in the world, but not a lot was with that 95 team, but they were clutch and they got the job done. It was like, it wasn't a long 3rd down,
No,
but
it was actually 3rd and 1.
yeah.
The
And
so
he had like the all of Three Rivers Stadium out to like, Wexford
yes,
to run. So, I mean, yeah,
and that's when the Colts were still winning the game.
yeah,
So if
that
he
would have
gets,
sealed it.
yeah, that would have sealed it. That would have absolutely, like, they would have you, because he wouldn't have just got 1 yard. He would have got about 40 or more. He could have gone all the way actually, and they would have just they would have run the most of the rest of the clock off. They would have gotten it probably at worst a field goal, and the Steelers just probably wouldn't have had time to make the drive that they made to take the lead. So and it's not just that Willie Williams stopped the guy; it's that he literally like ran around the corner of the line from the
Yeah.
other side of the field.
Well,
And
he wasn't even supposed to be playing that defense. He just like didn't know what to do. He was like, "Oh,
yeah,
I'll just run in here and make a tackle." It's like,
yeah, and
ooh,
he got the guy by like his shoestrings.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It wasn't like he stuffed him in the hole or something. He was chasing him from behind. And you're right. He had the entire field in front of him. one of those plays again. You remember that the Steelers came back. You remember the Hail Mary, but none of that ever happens. And then they lose the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row at home to a team that they shouldn't have. And Bill Cowher's legacy is very different if Willie Williams doesn't make that play.
Yeah. Willie Williams. I mean, he had a good season too, as the other corner not named Carnell Lake or Alvoid Mays. So
Yeah, that's right. He was only playing because Woodson had gotten hurt.
yeah.
And you're right. He was a very good player that year.
So continuing with our legendary plays here. Okay, everybody's seen that play like a million times, right, Tim? And,
So it's my first time. That's crazy. When
well,
did that
yes.
happen, Steve?
Well, if you're under a rock, this is Super Bowl 43, that 2008 team. Kurt Warner decides to throw a pass, and it's right before the half, and I think it was, what was it, 14-7 at that point? I think, or yeah,
It was 10-7.
10-7. Okay,
Yeah.
so 10-7. They can either kick a field goal and tie, or maybe even take the lead going to the half. It's a big play either way. And James Harrison makes a play for the ages, kind of like freelances a little bit instead of blitzing. He drops back, and Kurt Warner throws it to him. He makes a nice play and an even better run for 100 yards. He ran literally 100 yards on an interception. And like the stories of like, him being totally out of gas at the end, and like Mike Tomlin coming over and saying, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Just give me a minute, boss. I'll be fine."
Yeah.
He's the guy from the Green Mile. It's like, I mean, and then like, Deshae Townsend trying to get him to lateral the ball, and he's like, "Nope, not doing it."
Yeah.
I mean, Larry Fitzgerald like running on his own sideline, almost making the tackle at the one. And it's just an unbelievable play from beginning to end, and probably one of the greatest plays in Steeler defensive history. It happened in the Super Bowl. I think if it wasn't for the Santonio Holmes play, it is well remembered, but it will probably be a little bit more higher up. But
yeah, I totally agree. I think it's not only one of the greatest plays in Steeler defensive history. I think it's one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history, period. And like you said, it's not even the greatest play of this game because of what happens later with Santonio. So that's kind of unfortunate, because what should have happened there is that was a 10-point swing,
yeah,
or 14-point swing. Like you said, they could have scored a touchdown there. And then if the Steelers would have
just like
continued that
cruise to
momentum, yeah,
if they just wouldn't have gotten that safety late in the game, if they would have they completed that pass, and the game just kind of ends like a normal football game.
Right.
It's like, oh, everybody remembers the interception. That's the NFL film's highlight of that game.
Yeah, because then that plays the game winner, and so.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there with, like, what would you say, the Immaculate Reception, the Antoine Randall reverse pass, the catches by Lynn Swan, all the other, whatever happened in Super Bowl 9, Joe Green like getting an interception, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
So another here's a legendary play by a player who you would not expect. So he's an honorary member of the defense on this one, huh, Tim?
Yeah, well, he became a defensive player as soon as this happened.
So wow, thank goodness Ben made the choice of going backwards on that play and tracking him down. And it was Nick what was his name? Nick Harper. Yeah, there you go. And another shoestring tackle, much like the Willie Williams. It wasn't the greatest tackle in the world, but it's the tackle we needed at that time. And I mean, it's funny that one of the top defensive plays in Steeler history was made by a quarterback, but here we are, huh?
Yeah.
Ben's a special player, and that, great players make great plays when they need to, even if it's a tackle.
Yeah. Pretty. I mean, it's like Franco Harris's most famous play was a catch, right? And he was a running back. So you just, that happens sometimes. And Ben, once again, I don't think they win the Super Bowl that year if he doesn't make that tackle.
Oh, that would have been devastating. That would have been the end. We talked about that before. That'd have been such like Jerome Bettis would have like been like up there with like the Bill Buckner and
Yep.
Ernest Biner, and although even Ernest Biner like at least won a Super Bowl later, so
Yeah, that would have been. You're right. You just don't even want to think about. And I know we did the what if on it and the alternate history and everything, but it's like, thank goodness that it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, thank goodness. So going to our last one here. It's the 2008 season. How many is this in the 2008 season?
Yeah,
Like
it's a lot.
4, 5, 3? I don't know. So it's the AFC Championship game. The hated Ravens are in town, and the Steelers and Ravens are playing for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Pretty small stakes between two teams that are kind of meh for each other, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, this is a heated rivalry and a heated game with everything on the line. And Joe Flacco is the quarterback, and Willis McGahee scored a touchdown, and the defense has made all these plays all year. And it's coming down to the end of the game. I think there was like 3 minutes left,
Mhm.
and Joe Flacco goes back to pass, and then this happens. Wow, Troy Polamalu really cutting across that's 2 this season that that's 2 big interceptions by the defense for touchdowns that literally helped win playoff games. You're lucky if you see like one of those in a season, Tim. Never mind in like a playoff run.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just, it's crazy. What a great defense that 2008 was. It's one of the greatest all times for sure. In my, seasons of watching the Steelers, that's definitely probably the best defense they've had.
Yeah, it was an all-time great legendary defense. And
was Renegade responsible for this one too?
Oh gosh, I was at that game and I do not.
Well, you said the
remember.
Renegade guy kind of got started early, like he went a
Yeah,
little
he might
early.
have been
Prematurely
happy that game.
renegaded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a great moment. I've never been. I think I've said this on the show before, but I've never hugged as many strangers in my life as I did in that, and not like hugged, like nice to see you, like jumped into the arms of, and had them jump into my arms, kind of celebration.
Sports is fun like that. Yeah, it just
It
brings
is.
total random people together, and
Well,
you
and it
enjoy
was the
it.
Ravens. Like the Steelers have won big games before. They've won championship games before, but that was the Ravens. And Flacco, a couple of things people might not remember about that season is one, Flacco was a rookie, and it's like, oh, okay, he just, he was a rookie and he made a rookie mistake there at the end. The week before that, they had upset Tennessee in Tennessee. Tennessee was number 1 seed that year. And that game was tied like in the final minutes. And Flacco, from basically like his own end zone, let a drive all the way down the field to beat the Titans. So Joe Flacco was no slouch. And here he was only down by 2. So he could have let a drive again to get into field goal range, and they could have won the game and gone to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that was such a huge moment. And then the other thing that people might not remember, Steve, to your point about how many plays on this list were from the 2008 season, like take a guess at what the Steelers offense was ranked that year out of 32 NFL teams.
Running the ball, I know they were dead last or second to dead.
Just,
Them and the Cardinals were dead last.
Total
offense, I don't know, 25, 26.
Yeah, 20, 22.
Wow.
Yeah, and up into that point, when they were in the divisional round against San Diego, at that point it was the lowest ranked offense to ever make it that deep into the playoffs, to even to the divisional round.
But they had that good running day against San Diego for no apparent reason, which was weird.
They did, yeah. That was probably their only good running game. They had a terrible offensive line that season. Ben was always running for his life, and I think they won. It wasn't like they weren't the 2000 Ravens, right? Ben was an all-time great quarterback, and he won a lot of games late, especially like that first game against, or that the second game against Baltimore that got them the division. That was a Ben last second drive. Obviously, he had a last second drive in the Super Bowl. So he was winning them games because he was Ben, but the offense just wasn't that efficient, or really wasn't efficient at
Well, they
all.
lost the game to the Colts that year because they couldn't get a yard on 4th down that would
Yes.
have put the game out of reach.
Yes, because their offensive line was so porous. And, they had a lot of injuries. Kendall Simmons had gotten hurt, and they had let Alan Faneca go in free agency, which, at the time it was like he was old and he wanted this big contract and it made sense. But they had like nobody to play guard. They had Chris Kiyomatu and Darnell Stapleton,
Yeah.
who never played again
Well,
after that year.
you know what they both have? Super Bowl
Super Bowl
rings.
rings, yeah. Not really from them, but Jeff Hardings had retired, and they had Justin Hartwig was the center. He's the one that got the holding call in the end zone in the Super Bowl that got that safety. Like they just said, it was just the worst offensive line I think in the history of probably of the Steelers in the time I've been watching them anyway. And so anyway, that's why the defense was so important that year, because they just needed big plays from the defense, and they got it. Like you said, you're right, Steve. What other team can say they got like this massive pick six in both the AFC Championship game and Super Bowl in the same year? That's kind of hard to believe. I never really thought about that till you said it.
Yeah, it's definitely odd. It definitely proves the character of that team and that defense. I think too that team just had so much character. Like a lot of other teams would have quit or given up, and they played a tough schedule. I think that too. I think
Yeah.
that's why I think I like when a team. I mean, sometimes it's like, you're hoping your team comes together in the last half of the season, but sometimes playing a tough schedule kind of prepares a team for being down. And at some point, you're going to struggle in the playoffs. There's going to be a time when you have to make a play when the chips are down. You're not going to play all cupcakes,
Right.
the whole way through. So, that definitely prepared them. And, the all through, hopefully, our defense is definitely, they say defense wins championships. Well, it definitely won a championship that year. Although the offense, everybody remembers that play, and we wouldn't have run without it. But, Ben making a tackle the one year, and, Mike Wagner making a big interception. And like I said, I think Mean Joe Green actually made an interception on a tipped pass in the one Super Bowl too. And there's just been a lot of great defenses. It's a shame like the 94, 95 defenses didn't get more love, but they
Yeah.
didn't really win much any. 98, even in 98, in that championship game early on, like I think Levon Kirkland had an early interception off of Elway. So
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it definitely makes a difference when um the defensive play led to something bigger. So,
yeah,
or at least like won a playoff game. Like even like the Eric Williams thing, they didn't make the Super Bowl that year, but that won a playoff game. So, uh, yeah.
well, I hope you agree with them. If not, sure, feel free to email Tim. He's completely responsible. I just want to thank you for tuning in. Give us a review on your favorite podcast service, and it always helps us out. Word of mouth is great. Keep those Facebook comments coming. We're always happy to hear from anybody who listens and finds us a fan. If you think there's a play I missed in the defensive plays here, please let us know. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. And God bless.